I will call this Tigard City Council meeting to order. Deputy City Recorder Raymundo, please call roll.
Youth Councilor Vogel.
Here.
Councilor Shaw.
Here.
Councilor Singh.
Here.
Councilor Wolf.
Here.
Council President Hu.
Here.
And Mayor Lube.
Here. If everyone would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, everyone. City staff or council, any non-agenda items this evening?
None for us, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. The next item on our agenda is public comment. If you would like to give us public comment by phone or video, please do so now to get in line. The call-in number is 503-966-4101. Anyone present wishing to comment should sign up on the public comment form at the back of the room. And starting off, we have follow-up to previous public comment with Assistant City Manager Nyland. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. At last week's council meeting, we did not receive any written comment, but we had three people provide testimony in person. One community member talked about public input and how it is or is not used to form decisions. Numerous responses have been sent to this individual, and I believe a meeting to talk with them is scheduled for tomorrow. The two other comments were about traffic, homelessness, and safety issues near 72nd Avenue. Both people were residents of that area and wanted to know how they could help. For follow-up, Chief McAlpine reached out to Officer Orth to see what the status was as far as encampments in that area, and I believe the cleanup is in progress. That is my report for this evening. And my fun fact, there's a good chance you're going to hear the word Tyler at least 10 times tonight.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is the Tigard Area Chamber of Commerce, and the Chamber Board Director, Tom Engel, will be here to give an update. Welcome to City Council. If you just want to turn on the mic when you get there, there's a button to make it green. But we're a friendly crowd.
Yeah, this is true. So hello, I'm Tom Engel. I'm the board chair of the Tigard Chamber. Quick update for you that you have, I'll highlight some of the items written in front of you. Our Leadership Tigard program, I know a lot of you have been through it. The deadline for applications is September 15th. If you know of anybody who would benefit from a deep dive into Tigard, strongly encourage you to attend or give us a ring if they want to learn more information. In terms of our education, advocacy, and strong local economy initiatives, government affairs, we're going to be meeting on the 21st at 1:30 at the Chamber. We do have a goal this year to raise over $10,000 for scholarships. We're just about halfway to reaching that. We're doing a better job of communicating the opportunity, so that's helping. The Tigard Street Fair, didn't get a chance to go, but by all accounts, even without the baby goats, it was quite the event by all accounts. Fit Alliance and Breast Friends, the fundraiser, for those of you who have not been there, this is a wonderful, wonderful bit of community outreach done by Fit Alliance for the Breast Friends organization. And did anyone get to play with the goats? They are the highlight, amongst other things.
I took a picture.
They do? Oh, good. They bring baby goats. It's really great. You got to go sometime. But it's a great fundraiser. They have gone out of their way, and I think I wouldn't be surprised if they get north of $5,000 for this event. It's no small feat. The networking and visibility that we have coming up have our regular events. We also have a joint event coming up on the 14th with the Beaverton Chamber. Some good ribbon cuttings, and of course, you can always follow us on social media. The farmers market update, thank you very much to the city and Northwest Natural for helping to make this a possibility. It is growing, 30 to 45 vendors each week. The feedback is continuing to be really positive. And the very last thing I just want to highlight is Tonight, we're going to be hearing about the Tigard Small Business Sustainability Fund. This fund proposal was designed based on conversations and feedback from our local small business community and our Economic Development Department. We see this as a positive way to use the funding the City of Tigard currently has to provide support to those businesses hit hardest by the pandemic and ongoing vandalism. The 30-plus businesses we would be able to help with this reimbursement fund and other funding would generate a positive impact on our local Tigard economy. And based on recent national studies, generally speaking, 70 cents of every dollar you do spend locally does stay within the community. And we hope you will join us in support of this fund. What do I do now? Is this questions or what?
Yeah. We'll see if anybody has any questions for you. I think you were free. Thank you for your report. Next item on the agenda is we have our Tigard High School student envoy, and we have Julie Hernandez here to give the report. Welcome, Julie. It's the first time you're here, so we'd love to learn a little bit about you if you want to introduce yourself before giving your report.
Well, hello. My name is Julie Hernandez-Botello. I'm this year's Tigard High School ASB president. I'm also involved in Tigard Tennis, Link Crew, National Honor Society, Service Club, Intercombio, and I'm also an avid student. Today, I will be updating you on the leadership class, Tigard High School sports, service, and the arts. Starting off with the leadership class, last Friday we had our first assembly, which was our pep rally for back to school. It was super fun and definitely engaging to the students and the staff. The Spirit Committee has been giving out Most Spirited during football games, as well as planning our upcoming Spirit Week, which starts the 25th. The Inter-Club Council and Funds Committee held a club breakfast on the 8th of September, as well as planning our first club rush, which will be September 20th. The Activities Committee planned staff breakfast and starting to plan our homecoming parade, which will be the 29th of September. And ASB President, me and Vice Owen Albrecht will be planning homecoming voting. We've been starting to do that. In terms of sports, fall sports have begun. So that's football, volleyball, water polo, and soccer. Our soccer team is undefeated. They're 3-0. They're ranked number 4 in state, so that's super exciting. Our volleyball team won last Wednesday against Lake Oswego. Tigard football team won their first 2 games, and cross country as well, boys and girls varsity. So I think our sports are going very well starting off this school year. For service, throughout the summer there was many volunteer opportunities. Like our major one, August 21st, National Honor Society helped Teresa Wilson hold a back-to-school drive, which they received 512 supplies. And students were also able to help with Pack with Pride, Meal on Wheels, and the food bank, which all give back to our communities, receive the food that they need in any circumstance. And a service that is currently in action, National Honor Society is working with Alberta Ryder Elementary PSO meetings, so they're taking care of parents' children as they're engaging in conversation, which today is our first one, 6 to 7, so that's super exciting. And in terms of arts, choir has been planning our homecoming, which will be September 30th. The theme is A Night Under the Floating Lights, so that's super exciting. Other than that, that's all that's going on at Tigard High School. If you have any questions, I'd love to answer them.
I love how she says that's all. It sounds exhausting, all the different opportunities, but I'd love to know, how did your first week of school go?
Oh, it went well. I woke up at 5 every day. I had a lot to do. Yes.
No, that's awesome. Any questions no? All right. Well, thank you so much for being here reporting. And if there's any opportunities that you want us to participate in anything, please reach out. We love interacting.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me.
We'll see you next month. Perfect. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the police chief update, and we have Chief McAlpine with us. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge some news that came out publicly that the chief has announced her retirement. It's just an announcement. That's all I'm going to say.
I'm better equipped to handle
Okay. We'll keep it short and sweet and say we will take many opportunities until January to appreciate you, but words can't describe what you have meant to our community and to our department.
Well, thank you very much for those kind words. I would be remiss if I did not say I was a bag of cats the first couple days, and I'm starting to get a little more comfortable in what is ahead of me. But to help me ease into that, I asked Officer Orth, I thought it was an appropriate time, one, given that we have yet another month of most of our crimes trending down along with the calls for service, and giving a few of the public comments last council session on just where are we at with encampments. I figured it was appropriate time for Brian to energize us all once again on what he's doing and the process. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Brian.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me. It's nice to be back.
Can you turn your mic on, please? Thank you.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to be back. So I've been focusing on the houseless and the graffiti in the downtown area. So with the houseless, what happened with the time, place, and manner is that it was delayed because there was a LC3, which is a Washington County hyper-focused outreach group where they came out and they spent 6 weeks here and focused specifically on our homeless population and getting them resources, getting them into more permanent housing. So they requested that we delay our enforcement of the time, place, and manner for about 6 weeks while they worked on that. So of course we were like, yeah, that sounds great. This is all good. So we all worked together and we worked on that. So the time, place, and manner has just been it's been getting enforced here these last about the last month or so. So it was a little delayed. With the time, place, and manner, I worked with our outreach workers and the shelters, and we kind of came up with a plan. Well, I had the plan of listing all the camps, which you'll see on the slide up here. All the camps in Tigard, starting with the most impactful to the city, which is the camp over off of 72nd.
Next slide.
Yeah.
You can just go ahead. Next slide, please.
So this list got sent out to the parks, the streets, our outreach workers, and then also the city. So everyone was on the same page. There was a timeline. This is what we're going to do. And if there were any issues, we could discuss it. And everyone was in agreement. This was the best, least impactful to the houseless community. So we went with that, starting with the 72nd camp. That was, and still is in the process. It's been a challenge because the person who's staying there has some severe mental health issues, but she has some permanent housing. It's in the process of getting cleaned out right now, and that's progressing. The other two that are on there, the Steve Street, Woodard Park, those are right on schedule. The other one has been posted. So we're going right down the list. So that's good. And what you'll find with these camps when they start getting cleaned up is that the people that are relocating will gather all their belongings and kind of just pop out and just be working around. And so we get a lot of calls during those times, and that's what happens, is that they're getting all their stuff together so they're more visible, and people are like, oh, there's more transients coming. No, it's not the case. They're just moving along, and they're getting somewhere else. So that's what's been going on. Let's see. Any questions with any of that? I'm going to try and keep it short so that I don't take a bunch of time like last time. Okay. So then on to the graffiti. So graffiti's been a real challenge in the downtown area.
Next slide, please.
So these are, okay, so that's the 72nd camp there. It looks better now. She's been moving, they've been moving a lot of stuff. It's been a long process. And then Woodard Park and Fano Creek. Woodard Park is cleaned up and Fano Creek's coming next week. So those are just some examples of that. So the next slide. So this is some examples of the graffiti that's down there, down in the downtown Tigard area, and then Universal Plaza got hit again. So it's been hard to capture it on camera because it's always going to a different spot, and then it's reaching the capabilities of the city's camera systems that we have. So it's been real difficult to pinpoint and get it taken care of. But the plus is that the parks and the street crews clean it up very quickly, and the downtown businesses clean it up, and there's starting to become that sense of community down in the downtown area where there's that pride of, your businesses. So they're getting cleaned up before I even have to go mention it to them or say anything. So that's a good thing. And so we have the camera system set up at Universal Plaza. You can see the picture of the suspect there, and then some tagging that he did. So it worked exactly how it was supposed to. So the way it works is that if someone's lurking around in the area for a certain amount of time, it will notify the police department via email and text, and then those supervisors will dispatch the officers to go see what they can do. During that specific one, they were on a higher priority call. So it worked, but they were already doing something else, so they couldn't respond there. So that was unfortunate, but everything worked the way it was supposed to. So that was good. Let's see. Let's see what else. So that's what's going on with that. And then the city also received a $5,000 grant to help with the graffiti abatement. So I'm working with the city's management analyst, Alex Richardson. She went and rode along on the bike with me. We went to all these areas, and so we discussed some options of the abatement. So that's what was that. And then, so that's what's going on with the graffiti. Any questions about any of that?
And then I'll tie in a little bit more. I think most of you
Can you
are
turn on
aware.
your mic?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
That would help. I'll tie it in just a little bit more, as I think all of you are aware, but for our listening audience, the LC3 is the governor's edict on certain areas to do a more extensive outreach. So in Washington County, they prioritized where in the cities, and Tigard sat second. Forest Grove, I believe, was the first on a particular encampment, and then they decided to do all of the city of Tigard, and so we worked very closely with them to let them know where our folks were at, and so they could do that 6 weeks of extensive outreach. I think Kim had come earlier in the month to tell you how that went, and so this is just now, I think when you received of concerns, and then the city manager's office, we just said, please hold tight. You know, this is a 6 weeks process, and then we'll begin. And so now we're at that part of posting and methodically going. So again, not disrupting everybody all at once, but picking them one at a time. Still giving them an opportunity to try and connect with services, and then removal when have to. But like I said, Brian said, most of them do leave voluntarily when they're told, and then it's just a matter of picking up the things that they've left behind. So any questions on the encampments and or graffiti or anything else downtown?
Yeah, Councilor Wolf.
Thank you for the update, and I just so appreciate everyone understanding the challenges but working together to just really, like you said, Officer Orth, try to keep that downtown pride and clean up as quickly as possible. As we see individuals that aren't being placed in housing that are picking up and moving, do we have a sense of where they're headed, or just kind of looking for that next spot? I was just curious.
That's what's been a little tricky, is that the information doesn't really get disseminated to us. It's just they are somewhere else, and so it's been frustrating because you want to hear the success stories, and it's like, oh, sorry, that's special information. We can't tell you who got moved, where they moved to, or anything like that. It's just all of a sudden this person's gone. It's like, well, where'd they go? And so that's been a challenge, but we're working on those relationships to build trust and get build those bridges so that we can have those conversations and kind of all work together.
Yeah, because when we see how it works best is, for example, a long time known houseless person was actually finally about to get housing but needed another extra week or 2 weeks, and so we gave them that time, as long as there was an assurance that it wasn't being dragged on. But if we have that information and can work, it benefits everybody. And it's just a matter of the local outreach. Brian and Kim have done a great job with Caleb, and so that works. It's just the bigger entity that comes in doesn't know the police department or your local government, and so there's a hesitation to want to buffer and shield people. And so I think proof is in the pudding as they're doing this, and they get to work with us that maybe there is more of a collaboration, because at the end, I think we all want the same outcome, which is to get them into housing or any other type of services that they may need.
Council President Hu?
Thank you.
I might be repeating Councilor Wolf's question, but I was referring specifically to the, thank you for the weekly report, by the way. So a couple weeks ago, one case that was particularly disturbing to me was one individual was locked him or herself in the Universal Plaza bathroom and screaming for 45 minutes, according to the report. So do you remember what happened to that individual, and if we know what happened to that individual?
You remember that? Yeah, probably didn't have that case, because the one thing about that weekly report is it everything that goes on, whether Brian's working or not, so he gets the information at the same time. That is not uncommon. It happened actually quite a bit in Symposium in the bathrooms outside there, and I think that's just, again, individuals that are in crisis and, you know, tend to scream and yell and shout when they're actually not in peril or anything else. So yeah, it's not uncommon. So it's just for us is we're going to do a welfare check, see if we can get in, make sure they're okay. If we can get there, if we're not on any other calls, but that would be a fairly common one for us.
Counselor Shaw?
Great. Thank you, Chief and Officer Orth, for reporting. Echoing, the weekly reports are fantastic. Do you still see the same amount of trash that's being left behind? I know that was a cost incurred and we had not expected from a budget perspective, but do you see that still being about the same, or is it lessening?
It appears to be lessening as the construction's winding down. So that's been happening, but they're also taking away some of the garbage cans and putting new ones down there. They're taking away there's these plastic ones that are down there, and they're swapping those out for some metal ones. So it's in transition, and they're still trying to figure that out. But the garbage is less, and the streets crew is cleaning it up, and then the parks is cleaning it up as well. Like if I see it, I'm like, hey, this garbage can's full. One of the two will sweep it. We'll go down there and clean it up. So it is less than what I've seen in the past, so I think it's going in the right direction.
That
Are you
anticipating.
talking more about the encampments?
Yes, but thank you, because
Yes.
that actually was a
Yeah.
question of mine too, Officer.
Yeah, so on the cleanups, especially some of those are smaller ones, and especially if we've allowed them to kind of sit for that 6 weeks, are we seeing encampments getting larger and more debris, or is it more of a manageable?
It's a mixed bag. It's more manageable. If you can see from the slide I had up there, it says, I think it said on there, who would pretty much be cleaning it up, just based off of my experience. Like, yeah, the parks can clean this up. It's something they can go in there and clean this up, or no, this one's too big. So it's less because we haven't let it get as large. So that's what's nice about the time, place, and manners. We'll be able to go back there before they get too entrenched and cause too much damage to the land. So it's less.
Thank you.
And I think you were all made aware of an aggravated assault that occurred on one of our another unhoused, and so those are dangerous times that we want to take care of our vulnerable population, and I'm happy to say that the individual was apprehended and will go through the system, so it's a little bit safer, and I do know the victim was very cooperative, very appreciative of us taking care of him and being able to identify the individuals. So just again, trying to make it safe when you're in a very dangerous environment, or can be, not only the elements, but just also the predatory nature that can come out of it.
Any additional questions? Any additional questions? No? All right.
And then I apologize for the late notice, but I thought I would slide this in. Again, was just making you aware of I think you've heard me say this so many times. I guess I like pilot programs, proof is in the pudding. But Axon has a system called My90 that allows automated. It will know when somebody's called for police services, and they can get a text and participate in a survey. So we can get some real-time feedback on how we did, or how we're doing, and what they felt. And so we're ready to kick that off on Thursday. And we're the first one in Oregon to do this. There's an agency in North Carolina and some other states that have tried this. It's about a year before, if there's any cost, if we want to continue. So we'll get a good chance to assess and again, get that real-time feedback. So hopefully the next time we'll have some data and how it's working. I just wanted you all to be aware of it in case anybody asks you about it. If they get a text and they go, it's the real deal. And we'll have the communication, we'll have it on our transparency portion of our website as well. So look forward to coming back later to let you know how it's going.
Sounds good. Any questions or comments on that? No.
Thank you.
Thank you both for being here tonight. We appreciate it. The next item on our agenda is written public comment, and we did not receive any written public comment by noon yesterday. And then we will move on to in-person comments. We do have 3 people signed up. So when I call your name, please come up to the front, turn the microphone on, and just let us know your name, and you have 2 minutes. The first person on the list is April Sabi. Welcome, April.
Thank you, Mayor Lube and council members. I too wanted to congratulate our chief. I've come to know her personally and understand how lucky Tigard is to really have her. She's a gem. So, congrats. I'm here tonight to express concerns about the cottage cluster application received for the Edgewood development. While most Edgewood residents agree that the lot should be developed, current residents request city council members and the planning department support the current low-density zoning, which allows 4 to 5 homes. The cottage cluster application is proposing 21 units under Governor Kotek's middle housing mandate. Middle housing is a difficult conversation to have, and at the risk of sounding like an elitist, the real concern about the development is the quantity of people, parking, and traffic this development will bring to our street. Cottage developments don't allow garages, and for the Edgewood development, 19 parking spaces are proposed for 42 cars. This scenario is different from the newly built senior center, as we don't have a church parking lot next door. Instead, the applicant, former Mayor Jason Snyder, is proposing that the 23 vehicles and their visitor cars be parked on 93rd or Edgewood. Many of the homes on Edgewood are single level with living room and bedroom windows facing Edgewood. Proposed street parking would be in front of living room windows and bedroom windows instead of behind fences or on the side of buildings as on other Tigard streets. This creates a privacy and safety concern. A traffic study was done but excluded the cut-through traffic that will be created when the new senior housing is fully leased and at capacity. The developer commented that the traffic studies don't anticipate future traffic, they only record existing traffic. I asked city council members and the planning department to anticipate future traffic needs. Edgewood and 93rd are designed very differently than O'Mara and Hall Boulevard. Anyway, I'm grateful that the city does acknowledge the car crimes are on the rise. This development will bring these crimes to Edgewood Street, where we currently have none. The current residents have garages and driveways, leaving the street clear for trash cans, postal service, delivery services, school buses, dog walkers, wheelchair exercisers, skateboards, and kids. The safety of the street will be compromised with the cars and potential car crimes happening in front of living room and bedroom windows.
I'm going to ask you to wrap up, just to be fair.
I
Thank
ask
you.
city council members and the planning department to reconsider the application and support the current zoning instead of rezoning this high density. Thank you.
Thank you, April. The next community member we have is Paige Flanagan. Come on up, Paige. Welcome.
My name is Paige Flanagan. I'm a longtime Tigard resident. My family has been here since 1965, and I have a brick out there with my name on it. My family moved into Tigard in 1965. They bought 5 acres on Gardy. My grandfather worked for the railroad, and when he went into the office in Portland, they couldn't believe he had bought property so far away. By 1972, their property that was so far out in unincorporated Washington County became part of the city of Tigard. The second house purchased was our home on Edgewood in 1975. Edgewood was still a part of Washington County, and the road was gravel. The neighborhood banded together and had the road oiled at the cost of $200 per home. By the early 80s, the city of Tigard had surrounded Edgewood, and Washington County had the city take ownership of the area. The road was still only gravel with a few slurry-like treatments. The road was fine for the few residents on the street. In 1976, a block of 11 homes were built on Edgewood and O'Mara with approximately 22 cars. This began the group of 27 kids that would get off the bus from school in this thriving neighborhood. To us, it felt full. Over time, a few single-family homes would be added to flag lots and not much impact on Edgewood. In the late 80s and early 90s, the Chelsea Loop development of 37 houses was put in off O'Mara with approximately 74 cars. We began to see an increase of traffic on our small street, the same one that still hasn't been paved and has no sidewalks. We still had neighborhood parades, hordes of kids that played outside safely, and a very connected little community. I remember riding bikes around our block without worry of many cars, sliding down the Edgewood Hill when we got snow, and seeing our one and only street light come on when it got dark. After 2000, things really started to change. We watched Gardy get a brand new look with real pavement, utility upgrades, and an extension beyond 121st Street. It became hard to get out of the driveway because of the traffic. The throughput of Gardy added additional traffic to McDonald. People found this as a fast alternative of east to west travel through Tigard. Around the same time, a sewer line was put down the middle of Edgewood without all of the fancy pavement upgrades like Gardy got. Then the houses began to increase. In 2008, one house was sold, and 6 new houses were put up in the new side street, Halcyon Terrace. Then in 2012, the old Hage house was sold. 90th Avenue was put in, and 12 houses were built in that cul-de-sac. And again in 2016, 93rd Avenue was put in with 2 more houses. So from 2008 to 2016, 20 single-family homes with at least 40 cars were added to the traffic on our unimproved street with no sidewalks.
I'm going to ask you to wrap up.
The new housing next to the senior center is in its completion with 58 units. It is the potential of 58 additional cars on our still unimproved street with one small section of sidewalk in front of 3 houses. Once the traffic on Gardy and McDonald increased, since there are no lights or stop signs to slow the flow, drivers discovered our little O'Mara Edgewood neighborhood and began cutting through. We now have added traffic from Gardy, from McDonald, and the drivers do not even live here get mad when we tell them to slow down. If you have been keeping track at this point, there have been an estimated 194 cars added to the street that has never been properly paved in the first place by the city. TVF&R has a difficulty maneuvering the rig around the 190-degree corner in the street already. Now add another possible 44 cars from 22 cottages, proposed that half of which would be parked on the road. Add garbage pickup for 22 more dwellings. Garbage pickup days, only 1 car can maneuver around the cans at the time as it is.
Paige, I'm going to ask you to wrap up. If you'd like to send us that in an email, we'd be more than happy to read it.
I'll finish it next week.
Okay, thank you. Next on our list, we have Gabriella Congiora.
Yes.
Thank you for the pronunciation.
Yeah, only the relatives can say my name.
I appreciate it, because that is not how I would have pronounced it.
Thank you for everything you do. I think I voted for almost all of you. So, and I want to definitely thank our police. You guys do a great job for us. I'm here to talk about the cluster development also, and my questions to you guys are, well, first of all, I'd like to say that we are here and we're adamantly opposed to it because it does not fit in with the neighborhood. We'll add too many cars, the street's not large enough, we're going to have trouble with emergency vehicles. For instance, in 2021, I had a heart attack and had to have an emergency vehicle come get me, and it was tight already with the fire truck and the ambulances and everything. So it's only going to get worse. It's going to add crime, and I'm wanting to ask you guys, how is that crime going to be handled? We don't get a lot of patrols up and down our street now from the police because we don't have any problems. But I live alone on my acre, and I don't really want to deal with a lot of crime that will be coming, because these will turn into rentals. So what will happen, I'm a realtor, what will happen is people will buy these properties and they will get them at the good price, and then they will jack up the rent and they will keep them as rentals. It happens all over the place. And as a realtor, we advise our clients not to purchase houses with anything like that around them, along with condos. So what you're doing by if you do approve this, you will in effect harm renters and you will in effect harm the neighborhood and Tigard, especially if we get many of these. So I'm just asking, you know, what do you guys plan to do if the crime gets worse, the parking, what is the plan? And I'd like to have some answers next week when I come, please, if that's possible. I've never really done this political thing, so I want to know how I can get my answers from you guys.
So typically, once public comment is received, the city teammates and the staff will come up with the answers, and because we have your email address, or I will ask you to put your email address or your phone number on, we will reach back out to you, and then just like earlier, Assistant City Manager Kathy Nyland will come up and brief us on the response. So you should receive a response, I assume probably this week. I'm looking at, yes. So you'll receive a response from staff this week.
Okay, the last thing I'm going to say is that I'm not opposed to cluster housing. Obviously, as a realtor, I think it's a great idea if it's handled properly and for the people that need it. It should be along main arteries, not put into a neighborhood with half-acre lots and houses with acre lots. It just doesn't fit in. And I know that may sound elitist or whatever, but there's a better way to plan a city, and that is to create those types of housing where there's already traffic that can accommodate, like with a fire truck or with transit like Ubers and taxis and things. So, but putting it a mile away from the city, the transit where the bus is, no one's going to walk. So there's going to be 42 extra cars that are going to be going up and down the street, and they're going to have only 17 spaces because there are 19, but 2 of them are for handicaps. So it is doubtful that someone with a handicap is actually going to live there. It's just too far from everything. That's my 2 cents on it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the time.
The next item on our agenda is phone or video public comment. Network Administrator Thornborg, are there any phone callers in the queue or anyone on video waiting to comment?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you so much. Next item is our administrative report, and we will turn to City Manager Reimer.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, councilors, members of the community, and my teammates that are here and watching. Chief, we're also going to start on behalf of your 350 teammates. We appreciate you, and just we look forward to the next 4 months working alongside and getting more done around here. So, you know, it's a big day for you, but we just want to say thanks now, and we'll say thanks many times coming up. So. Also happy to report that our teammates, primarily in economic development, library, and with MISO, we work with, we've selected our next entrepreneur in residence for the Opportunity Cafe at the library. This is Michelle Cruz, and I'll provide additional information to you in my weekly report that I provide. But an exciting time that Israel is continuing his business, and now Michelle is going to join us at the library to continue the success that we've had there in our really equity-centered economic development effort that we have. So a continued thanks to the council for your support of that program as well. Also a thanks to the many teammates, some of you in our community for the fair this last weekend, the street fair. I know we had the 2 booths, the overall city booth and our police booth, and we had a lot of people come through. I know our library teammates heard a lot of great things. We received a lot of great input, the chief and others, Maddie and others that were there. We also had officers obviously there at the event. We had our public works and parks teams there and others. So just thanks to everyone for working collectively with our downtown as well as our community to provide another great event. And there's just a few things to wrap this up. Our summer reading program that we've talked about wrapped up at the end of August, and we ended up having almost 1,000 youth, teens, and adults participate. So another great summer of reading for our community. And also the library is going to start offering music and move in Mandarin story time on Mondays starting at 1 o'clock. This will go through October 2nd. The founder of Heartstrings Mandarin will lead the children and their parents as they sing, play instruments, and tell stories in Mandarin and English and American Sign Language. And as the note says here, all levels of Mandarin fluency, from the absolute beginner to those that are fluent, are welcome to attend. So thanks to our library for continuing offering a variety of diverse programming there. And that concludes my comments tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions based on the administrative report? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to the Tigard Business Sustainability Fund Program, and City Manager Reimer will present the item.
Yeah, my turn again. So thank you, Mayor. I also want to acknowledge that we had a supplemental that was shared yesterday. The continued great work with the Chamber and Megan. We have added a few things just for clarity, and now I've called it the Tigard Small Business Sustainability Fund to make sure that the council and community understand the focus is really on our local small businesses, and then just some of the ineligibility of those that are on the selection team and things like that, just to make sure that people know there's no conflicts of interest. So with that, tonight we are here to talk about the Tigard Small Business Sustainability Fund. As you may recall, this came out of your goals, which you're going to hear more about later today. Specifically, though, this is in the houselessness and a way to help support our local businesses to make sure that we're comprehensively looking at our entire community as we looked at ways of supporting houselessness, those that are actually houseless and those that are helping to provide services to them. And so this was started with looking at, as you may recall, a reimbursement program for safety and security upgrades and other trainings that the downtown businesses may have incurred, and as a way to help make sure that we had a vibrant downtown in other areas. I reached out to Megan DeSalvo from the Chamber, obviously, and asked if she would be interested in working together on this through a grant agreement, and she said yes. And so we started talking, included Lloyd Purdy as well as from our economic development team, just to make sure we didn't have any duplication of the many other grant programs we have to support local businesses as well. As a result of that, Megan and her team spent time actually talking with upwards of 40 businesses, some downtown, some of the Triangle, and then some throughout the community, just to understand their needs. And that is where the program went from looking at the safety and security to a more comprehensive that was really focused on the continued recovery from the effects of COVID-19, as well as some of the things I already previously mentioned. And so within your packet is the list of the different programs. There's also, just for transparency's sake, there's also the administrative fee that is customary that the Chamber would charge of 10%, and then the marketing fee of the program to make sure that the community knows about it of 5%. So the majority is still going to go directly to the businesses. Right now, with just anticipating the dollar amounts of the reimbursement program and the number of businesses in need, we estimate about 30 businesses could be supported. What's important, I think, to highlight in this, and this is all credit to the Chamber, is they've really looked at ways of how do you match up our local businesses who are in need with our local businesses who provide services, so we can connect them and make sure the money stays local. And so we're actually leveraging the funds to support businesses in multiple ways. So tonight we are asking you to approve the concept, because we don't have the agreement done yet, and then authorize myself to work with the city attorney to develop the grant agreement not to exceed $250,000 with the Tigard Chamber of Commerce to administer the program. That concludes my remarks. I know we have our representative from the Chamber here as well, who shared some nice words already, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
No. Questions, comments, concerns? Yeah. Councilor Wolf.
Yeah, just a quick comment in support of that idea, support of local businesses and keep the money here and just help them kind of continue on moving forward given the impact of COVID. So I think it's a creative way. I appreciate the support from the Chamber in ensuring that it's marketed and accounted for, and all those processes are in place. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Councilor Shaw.
Thank you for all the hard work. I know this was important to a number of us because we heard from our small businesses about the both the lingering effects of COVID, but also the impacts from vandalism and houselessness. So really thrilled that this idea has come to fruition. So want to thank the city teammates, Steve Reimer, and those who worked on this. And small was the intent, so was that something that actually had been defined, or is that just going to be defined as we move forward? And then also, I know we had a 6-month annual report, and given it's a new program, I'm wondering if we couldn't come back in just 3 months, and because I think it's going to be wildly successful, but could we come back in 3 months and just have an update? Thank you. Mayor.
Thanks for those questions, Councilor. First, on the There's still some of the details in the defining of the program. We've had a few questions by businesses in terms of eligibility criteria. So we do need to define some of that through the agreement on that part, but it's really focused on Tiger businesses and small businesses, right? And then I think that's a good idea. I could talk with Megan about having, after we have the agreement and 3 months of experience, we could check in, let you know then, and then we'd have a 6 months, that'd be another 3 months, and then at that point we could decide what the cadence would be on future check-ins. So,
Thank you.
yep.
Councillor Singh, any questions?
Just a comment. I noticed that there's an opportunity for energy efficiency and sustainability audit, so just want to thank y'all for incorporating that, as one of our goals as well. So thank you.
Council President Hu?
Yeah, a common question. So I've been asked by a couple of business members, if it's only for downtown, as the document and what you mentioned, that it's not just for downtown. So maybe we can, advertise that when this goes live. This is not just for downtown. And I think it's similar to Councillor Shaw's questions about definition. So I read that priority given to those businesses who have lost revenue when comparing to 2022 versus 2019. So my concern is that if it gets so successful and we have more than 30 businesses apply, how are we going to use this? It seems like it's the only criteria that's written down right now. So perhaps there should be additional criteria just in case, we have more applicants, and how we comparing their business loss, and what happened if they only started in 2019. Of course they're going to have not too many. Their business revenue going to be low because it's a new business. So in concept, I support it, but perhaps a little bit more criteria on priorities. So.
Yeah, I appreciate those comments, Council President, and that's exactly why we've asked you to approve the concept, because we know some of that additional work has to be done. We're obviously happy to share what we come up with in terms of the criteria. And just from a funding standpoint, I didn't mention that in my brief update there, is as a reminder for the council, this is $250,000 from your pandemic relief fund, which the source is our ARPA funding from the American Rescue Plan. That was focused and dedicated towards business support last fiscal year when you approved a $750,000 support package. We ended up spending $500,000 last year, and so this was that remaining $250,000. What I'm getting at is, if this is a wildly successful program because there's a lot of need, I think that the conversation continues, like the council, this council as well as the previous council said, those funds were meant to support our community, and I think we would want to have a conversation with you if we thought it merited it.
I just want to echo saying thank you for coming up with, I charged you after a great conversation that I had with a business owner on being creative in the way in which meeting businesses where they are and what might be the right fit for them to help them continue to recover. And so working with the chamber and working with Megan really proved to come up with kind of a cool plan for, even, especially some of the coaching possible that has a real long-term effect. And I think using the funds and redirecting them and coming up with a fresh way to apply them to businesses is a great way for us to make sure that it's reaching the people that we intended to when we initially voted on it. So I'm supportive of it. I want to thank the Tiger Chamber for the partnership and really executing and managing this. And I look forward to the reports coming forward and the additional criteria, because I agree. I think there has to be some real specific structure around who is eligible and that criteria.
So, Mayor, with that, I would like to move to approve, but maybe this is a question for City Manager. Do we need to insert the word small?
I would.
Okay. So I'd like to make I move to approve the Tigard Small Business Sustainability Fund concept and authorize the city manager to execute an agreement with the Tigard Chamber of Commerce for an amount not to exceed $250,000.
I second the motion.
The motion has been moved and seconded. Will the youth councilor give an advisory vote?
Yes.
Okay. All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is adopted by unanimous vote of the council. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is our code compliance update, and we have our code compliance officer, Ken Ross, here to present the staff report. Welcome. I think this is your first time in front of us.
It's not my first time, Mayor.
Oh, can you turn on your microphone? Not in front of city council, but I think in front of this group.
Correct. So good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I'm Ken Ross, Code Compliance Officer for the City of Tigard, and I'm here to give a staff report and an update on our code compliance program. And this web page that's up, this is our code compliance web page, and this has got a bunch of great information about how to what is a code compliance concern, how to submit a code compliance request. And that gentleman that's pictured on the page is Albert Shields. He's my former mentor and colleague and developer of this program, and he passed away during the pandemic. So he left a good legacy for us. So hopefully I can, usually he gives these reports, so hopefully I can live up to his legacy. Next slide, please. So what is code compliance? Code compliance maintains community safety and livability by enforcing various state and local codes that regulate real property. In other words, land and structures attached to it. So that's what we regulate. I know there's been some confusion sometimes about, do I enforce person-to-person crimes? No, I don't. I just enforce land and its use and the structures and everything associated with land. Next slide, please. So this is when you start to submit a code compliance request, this page pops up. This gives you the 4 basic code compliance case types: building code, which involves new structure, new construction, trade permits required, that sort of thing. Development is zoning regs, land use approval required. Housing usually involves property maintenance requirements, and nuisance involves livability concerns. Next slide, please. So as of 8/22/2023, these are the code compliance cases that have come in. We had 316 that we processed. 58 of those were development and construction related cases. 35 were lack of property maintenance related housing cases, and 223 were nuisance or livability related cases. 27 out of 316 of those were resolved without having to send out a second notice. So we typically get about 91.5% code compliance without having to escalate our enforcement. So we're pretty effective. 116 out of those 316 cases, 37% of the 2023 code compliance cases are associated with public right-of-way impacts involving various encroachments and obstructions such as overgrown vegetation, abandoned property in the right-of-way, fences and retaining walls encroaching, vehicles blocking sidewalks, broken and raised sidewalks, pods or shipping containers and porta potties in the right-of-way without permit, work conducted in the right-of-way without permit, and illicit discharge into the stormwater system. So a lot of what we enforce has to do with right-of-way. It's a big chunk of what's being reported. Next slide, please. So here's an example of some of the code violations we get. These are hazard trees. Notice the significant lean of the trees in the photos, which indicate that the trees are ready to fall. The Tigard Urban Forestry Manual provides hazard tree criteria, which folks here can refer to. Residents can submit good faith complaints based on that hazard tree criteria. Next slide, please. Mold is a common issue in the Pacific Northwest. These are some examples of complaints we receive about mold. If a mold problem persists, we can require a report with treatment recommendations provided by an industrial hygienist. Next slide, please. Here are some examples of reported dangerous structures. The picture on the left is a column that was hit by a vehicle. The other photos involve buildings where large fires occurred, compromising the integrity of these structures. Next slide, please. Raised broken sidewalks. We receive a lot of complaints about broken sidewalks, which means people are out walking, biking, and wheelchairing around the city. Next slide, please. Prohibited camping. This is the aftermath of a prohibited campsite. Back in 2018, this particular site required a cleanup that took about a month to remove all of the associated waste, garbage, and debris. And the property owner said it cost him about $100,000 to remove all that waste and debris. Next slide, please. Obstructions in the public right-of-way. Here are some examples of right-of-way obstructions involving overgrown vegetation, encroaching vegetation, construction, fencing that's sticking out too far, waste containers that are left out into the street. You know, they should be curbside and not left out there after pickup. Next slide, please. Open storage of garbage, junk, and debris. Here's some examples of openly stored garbage, junk, and debris. The Tigard Municipal Code defines junk as items that have no apparent utility or in unsanitary condition. Next slide, please. Graffiti. Here's some examples of graffiti in the downtown area. Metro, just as Officer Orth talked about earlier, just provided the City of Tigard with a grant for graffiti abatement, which will be put to good use. Next slide, please. High weeds and grass. Summer typically shows an uptick in complaints about high weeds and grass, particularly due to fire hazard concerns. Next slide, please. Dilapidated accessory structures. Here are a few examples of dilapidated accessory structure, including a crumbling wall, a rotting shed, and a collapsing fence. Next slide, please. So as I said, those are just a few examples. If you want to know more about what I do with code compliance, you can listen in on this podcast that communications manager Kent Wyatt and I discussed common code violations in that podcast. That's the webpage. You can get access to that, and also discussed why the Niners are a better football team than the Seahawks. Next slide, please. How do I report a code violation? You can do it in person at the permit center, online, email, phone, or snail mail. So lots of ways to report code compliance issues or concerns. Next slide, please. What's next for code compliance in Tigard? Next slide, please. Rental housing inspection program. So senior planner Skylar Warren and I have been working on implementing a housing inspection program, which he will be providing more detail about in the future. Next slide, please. Dashboard update. IT is working on a dashboard update which will provide code compliance metrics, as I discussed earlier. Stay tuned for that, and we've got a little placeholder I put on there. Next slide, please. Q&A, if you folks have any questions of me.
Questions? Yeah, Council President Hu.
Thank you. Thank you. So for sidewalks that are dangerous or unsafe, how are they typically resolved? Do homeowners have problems finding help to fix them, or could you help them with that usually, or how does that usually resolve?
Right. Well, the first step is they have to get a public facilities improvement permit through the engineering department. So that's step one. So that gives them the right to work in the right of way. There are resources available, and we do refer folks, if they can't afford the repair themselves and they need assistance. We've done a lot of referrals. There's some home repair assistance services, like Washington County has the HARD program that we've referred folks to. Catalyst Northwest Partnerships is a nonprofit that will help out, and Community Action is another nonprofit that will help out. So we do a lot of referrals to those folks. So if folks can't get assistance or they don't have the resources to do it themselves, there are folks willing to help them with that.
Thank you, and thank you for highlighting the trash can. I ride my bikes quite a bit, and sometimes it's dangerous to block those bike lanes, and I sometimes wonder if I'm going to get hit by a car if I have to avoid the trash can in the bike lane. So thank you for highlighting that. And the last question is for the mole. Those pictures you provide seems to be from the inside. So how are they usually? Who usually report those problems to you?
Usually it's a tenant.
Okay.
Of an apartment complex or some rental will say, hey, we've got a mold issue. We've reported it to management, property management. It's not being taken care of. I'll reach out to property management. We'll find out what steps they're taking to mitigate that mold. And usually they do a pretty good job. But there's some things that they require the tenant to do too. Sometimes the tenant's not necessarily following the instructions of the landlord. So there's some kind of back and forth. We have to figure out what's going on and investigate that. And sometimes we have to get an industrial hygienist to come and do a mold test, inspect the property, and find out how much mold is actually there, and then provide recommendations for abatement. So it depends on the situation.
Okay. So I guess since we're going to talk about tenant protection and registration later, it's just interesting to me that tenants are already reporting issues without this proposed program. So it will be interesting for me to hear later on why we need this program in the first place. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Wolf.
So Officer Ross, thank you, Compliance Officer Ross. You are very succinct in your presentation, like in your notice rate. So I did, on a side note, as I was learning things as a candidate and as a new council member, I did listen to your chat with Kent. It was very informative, so thank you for that. So what my question is a 91% first notice success rate, I think is pretty impressive. So I'm just curious about, and typically I'm assuming these costs are on the owner when they're told they're at a code violation. So how does that process work? I mean, I'm sure since the issue is already existing, clearly the owner isn't concerned about fixing the problem. So just curious about how you do your job, I guess.
So we initially sent out a code compliance notice. We let the property owner, and sometimes the owner doesn't even know that there's an issue.
Okay.
So a lot of times, this is just about education. And I would say the majority of these are just, I didn't know, and then we let them know, no, you can't do that or you can't allow that. And then they could have a tenant that is maybe not managing the property correctly. Okay. They have to step in and fix the problem. So most of this is just a lower level of awareness and just raising that level of awareness up so they understand what the issues are.
Great, thanks.
I'd say 90% of what I do is educational.
You stole my question.
Oh.
That's fine. I figured, with that high of a rate that most people probably didn't know, and it was just nudging them along the way. My other question is, that's a lot of code compliance issues, and I'm going to assume the answer is no, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you ever do anything proactive, or is it simply only complaint-based driven?
We are complaint driven. However, I get a lot of referrals from other departments. So, for example, the Public Works Streets team, they're out patrolling the streets. They're looking for things in the right-of-way that are impacting the right-of-way. Mm-hmm. So I get a ton of referrals from the streets team. So while we do take in complaints from residents, we also have all the departments in the city report to me if there's violations they see. And if I see something as I'm going from point A to point B, I can do something about it as well. But we're complaint driven, so we have plenty to do with the complaints coming in.
Yeah, no, I certainly assumed that was the case, and I think if we were to ever, as a council, think about more of a proactive approach, I think we would have to expand the staffing level of the department. It's just an interesting thing to think about if we wanted to flip that as well. So, any other additional questions? Yeah, Councillor Shaw.
You reminded me of a question, Mayor. In a lot of neighborhoods, there's these areas that are fenced off, and they have either riparian or they have swells, and I cannot think of the name, but they're posted with markers like city, 19-235. And my understanding is they're owned by the city.
Water quality facilities?
Thank you. Yeah, little mini water quality facilities. But oftentimes they don't appear to be maintained, and they tend to be overgrown. And wondering, is that something we should mention on this form, or how should we let the city know about this?
Yes, there's always room for improvement and expanding the information that we have on the website. I think that's the best way to handle it, is to expand our information we put out there. I do enforce those, so that is information that I get called on those. So we do enforcement on that. If it's a City of Tigard owned facility, then I would be contacting one of our departments and say, hey, we've got a situation. Sometimes, depending on the plot of land, the owner has to maintain those water quality facilities, and sometimes we do. So you have to dig in a little bit to figure out who's responsible.
Council President Hu.
Speaking of things I didn't know, I guess I didn't know that sidewalks are homeowners' responsibility. So they probably didn't know that. And it just remind me one thing about what would you advise homeowners or anybody who are hesitant to report issues because their name will not, people can't find out who filed the report, right? Eventually, if
Everything is subject to public records request.
Sorry.
All communication with the city is subject to a Oregon public record law.
Right. So, do you know that
Well-
people hesitant to, because of that, they hesitant to report?
Once in a while, we
Yeah.
have some hesitation, but if they can show that there is a situation where they are going to be put in harm's way by reporting, then we can handle it anonymously.
Okay. That's
Sure.
That's nice to know. Thank you so much.
I will also add, I know the former mayor, Mayor Snyder, used to offer that they could put his name in if they felt
Are you
uncomfortable. It's fine with me. I mean, if someone is uncomfortable about their situation and somebody else is out of compliance, I certainly understand. And so I will say publicly, I'm about to become a real complainer, Ken. Feel free to use my name if there's safety concerns. Yeah. Any additional questions? Yeah, Councilor Singh?
Thank you, Mayor. I was curious about lead poisoning and if you all, investigate those cases, or does that go to public health? Or?
Yeah, so something like that where we would have to have special equipment to do testing, we would probably get DEQ involved. Something that's outside of our scope or our ability to test for. Sure. Or health, sure. There's a variety of different agencies we would contact on something like that.
Yeah, Youth Councilor Vogel.
So I was just looking over, and the 91.5% is really great, but I just kind of had a question. If a second notice or third is needed, do you guys have, kind of what does that process look like? And, do you have a limit, or do you work until that problem is resolved?
Sure. So we just did an abatement on worst case scenario is if we are going to get non-compliance out of a property. We've sent second, third notice. They're refusing to comply. Then I can go and request an abatement warrant. I can make a case that I need a warrant to abate. So if we had a fence that's obstructing the public right-of-way, we needed to get some work done in the right-of-way. That fence is not being moved. I had to go to the judge and get an abatement warrant and then contract out to get folks to come remove the fence, remove the materials, and then fine them for that, and then or go to court if they don't want to pay the fine. They can tell it to the judge, and we can hash it out in front of the judge. But that would be the worst case scenario.
Perfect. Thank you.
Do you often have to go to worst case scenario? I mean,
We just had one worst case scenario, but not often. Not often.
any additional other questions? Thank you. I think you answered a lot of questions that maybe we didn't know we had. That was great.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda tonight is the adoption of the Racial Equity Plan, and we have DEIB Manager Kurt Junn here to present the staff report.
So I will kick it off, Mayor, if you don't mind, Mayor and Councilors, as Kurt is joined by our Human Resources Director, Warner. So as the council knows, we amended the agenda to add this item, and just a little explanation is we've been working on our Racial Equity Action Plan for some time, and there's a great deal of detail in there that the council knows about. One of the areas that we know we need to continue working on is our history section, to really make sure that we accurately recognize, understand, and celebrate our past. And so rather than waiting for that work to happen, we decided to give this living document, just like your equity commitment, which is also a living document, a version number. And so this is our Racial Equity Action Plan version 1. We've also invited Wendy up because, as we discussed when the council approved Kurt's DEIB manager position, is that it was important that we brought in someone with the expertise and background that could really help be a resource and guide our organization, though the success and failures of this organization could not rest on one person's shoulders. And so tonight we're starting the process of having this be more of a multi-teammate presentation to provide some real in-depth knowledge on what's happening. And so Kurt is going to share some of the high-level information. Wendy will share some of the things that we're doing in the Human Resources Department on behalf of all of our teammates. One of the things, as we've talked about before, as well as this document came to life, the leadership team said, we obviously have a lot of responsibility for this, and so we selected what is the first thing we're going to work on, and so we worked on the area that talked about diversifying our workforce, making our team more diverse to reflect our community. And so As we've started down that path, obviously human resources is a big part of that, and so tonight we want to share just some examples of things that are happening so you understand just some of the different details above and beyond just the concepts that are in the plan, but what actions are we really starting to take that will affect that change that you're looking for and guiding us towards. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Kurt, who will invite Wendy in as appropriate. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Good evening, Mayor and councilors, fellow teammates, as well as community members here. I'm not necessarily, I'm not sworn, but I too would like to salute our Chief Kathy for her amazing leadership and her championing the DEI efforts of our city as well. And I notice our code compliance officer has taken much of our agenda time here, all to which I would say go Seahawks. Let me just begin with our first slide. It's a program management update overview. I'd like to just share, as part of the introduction, just some quick hits as well as our equity commitment and the impact of our equity commitment declaration that was adopted 3 weeks ago. And I'd like to share a little bit more about our Racial Equity Action Plan before we request your formal adoption of this plan for the city. I begin with this introduction of answering or starting with the question, why? Because that is commonly the response that I am engaged with individuals that might not know why is this so very important, how does this impact me, and how does this really impact my work? And so as we endeavor toward explaining as well as informing and educating, there's a great deal of a moral imperative in why we do this work. We're talking about every person that we want to embrace, and the business imperative. What is often overlooked is the fact that when there's a clear disparity of equity, most organizations and regions and cities don't necessarily see the economic impact, adverse impact that it makes in the region. So with that, our commitment to equity is everywhere in our city. It's in our vision statement. It's in our community promises. And
hey, Kurt, or can we advance the slides? I think a couple slides.
Oh, yes.
To the commitment to equity slide, please.
Okay, yes. Could we move to the next slide? The next slide. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just want to point out and celebrate the Equity Commitment Declaration that was adopted 3 weeks ago. I'd like to just share with you just a quick story of its impact. This is Mr. Waji Saeed. Next slide, please. He has an amazing and wonderful organization and institution. It's the Islamic School of the Muslim Educational Trust, and he is the co-founder and president. He resides right in our city, and we had a wonderful opportunity to meet. I've met him 8 years ago. He still remembered me, and in hearing about the Equity Commitment Declaration, he was proudly able to wear the City of Tigard pin. So this was a photo op with him. And then the next slide, please. This is some of his teammates, Mr. Jawad Khan, who's the Chief Program Officer, and Ms. Sahar Basayuni, who's the Director of Schools. And I don't know how Mr. Saeed talked me into it, but my wife is now scheduled for a professional development seminar for the ladies at this school. So very excited about this partnership with the diverse segments of our community, and the Equity Commitment Declaration has really encouraged a great deal of our community. So with that, I'd like to present the Racial Equity Action Plan to you. And I'd like to also mention, in honor of many individuals that took painstakingly a process and research to draft and to vet this plan, to pull it together. Some that are, the next slide, please. Some that are with the city of Portland, city of Tigard, and some who have gone to other organizations. But in this Racial Equity Action Plan, we are proposing how we lead this work with race more specifically with color. And as I've mentioned before, there are some predictable indicators with that in our data analysis within our communities and our data analysis of our workforce. Next slide, please. This is the current data that we have for our workforce. We have 368 full-time and part-time employees, and you will see the breakdown of each department as well as the race and ethnicity breakdowns as well, and gender. Next slide, please. You're going to also see our current management demographics, our 69 managers and supervisors, and their gender and race and ethnicity breakdown as well. The next slide will show you how we compare to the total population of the city of Tigard. And this data is from the PSU Portland Research Center as of December 15th, 2022. With 57,344 in the city of Tigard, you will see how it compares to our workforce and the percentage and the workforce delta that you'll notice. So one to just point out for you is the plus 11 orange segment that is identified there is 11 points higher in our workforce representation of the white category, and then also in the management delta change of 17. In the red, you'll notice the opportunities where we are underrepresented in terms of our diverse communities that we serve. And so from here, I'd like to just hand it over to Wendy as she will share more about our trends and initiatives that are in place that are very exciting and very positive in terms of where we're moving.
Thank you, Kurt. Next slide, please. I think, good evening, Mayor and Council. I think you may have had a sneak peek last week of the new employer branding and Team Tigard logo that we've developed. And I have to just congratulate and thank our communications team for working hard on putting together a really great graphic that represents a number of things to the city and to our team members. As you see this circle of people coming around, they're all different color, and that really represents the diversity that we have within our team member workforce and the diversity that we'd like to continue to attract to the team member workforce. And it comes around, this group of people comes around a star, and that really helps us focus on excellence within our team and representing the 5 E's as well. So there's a lot of meaning that we tried to incorporate into this Team Tigard logo, and we want to be able to use it both internally for our team members, you belong with Team Tigard, as well as external communications to attract new team members to the city with you belong at Team Tigard. So we're very excited about the opportunity to start using this on inward-facing and outward-facing collateral for human resources and outward advertisements and so forth for recruitment. Along with employer branding, I would like to just mention to the prior slide of the 368 employees. I think it's important as we continue to reach out and continue to attract diverse talent to the city to recognize that in the past 2.5 years, we have increased our diversity within our workforce by 50%. Of the 82 employees that are noted of diverse background of the 368 total workforce, 41 of those employees have been hired in the last 2.5 years. And so that really speaks to the commitment that our leadership team across the city has made to increasing diversity and making this a priority. So I just wanted to mention that's something that has really been evident in the recent hiring the last couple of years. City Manager Reimer mentioned last week about the diversity job fair that the partners with our police department and human resources were involved in Portland. And that's one of the activities that we're working toward, is to make sure that we're more present at these opportunities to continue to attract and grow our workforce. And then some of the things we've been doing internally include reviewing all of our applicant-facing collateral, all of the information that is on our website to ensure that we have gender neutrality and that the verbiage is attractive to people from all backgrounds. And we're also, we've implemented multiple options. Previously with our new employees, there was only an option to select 2 genders. We are now aligning with State of Oregon to ensure that we have options for male, female, non-binary, and ungendered. So we're trying to expand that to make sure people feel more included and that they feel that they're recognized and that they belong when they're here. We're also working to report on ethnicity throughout our applicant tracking process, and we have discovered how we can now identify individuals throughout the applicant process, from minimum qualifications to the interview to whether or not they were selected for another interview or selected for the position. And we'll begin to start tracking that so that we can see trends over time and where people might be falling out of the process if they are, and how we can address that and identify opportunities for improvement. And then with our job descriptions, we've also started incorporating language of inclusion and diversity and belonging in the job description, with a purpose statement at the beginning of the job description, an explanation of our values, and then a section explaining why people belong at Team Tigard, including information about diversity, good stewardship, collaboration, caring, innovation, sustainability, and safety. And so recognizing that we want to attract people who have those values and hold those values dear, and that we want people to know that that's something that we represent here at the city, and that's why they would belong. So we're working behind the scenes to continue to improve our processes to remove barriers and obstacles to employment in our job descriptions, including removing acronyms so that people understand that people don't have to ask, what does this mean? That we'll spell it out so that it's easier to understand.
Great. Thank you, Wendy. So if I could point you to the next slide. I'd like to point out on page 9 through 12 in the Racial Equity Action Plan, you'll see the 3 key strategies that have been outlined: cultivating inclusive culture, developing and utilizing shared tools and resources, and bias towards action and continuous improvement. You will see the list of action items that are in that plan on this slide, just as an overview. But what I would like to point you to is kind of a sampling of how this is related to our council goals and strategic plan. We've convened at the start of this year an Equity Mapping Solutions project team. It's led by Preston Beck, who's the GIS program administrator, as the team project leader, and I as a sponsor. And there's this working draft group of indicators that you see under our vision of walkable, healthy, and accessible columns. These are presently grounded in the city's strategic plan, and this project will flesh out more with the possibility of more indicators that we would like to see how that can be measured for our equity progress. Next slide, please. So essentially, what the Racial Equity Action Plan does with, next slide, please. What this Racial Equity Action Plan does as we hone in on areas of opportunities for progress and focus is really an equity call to action, and how do we operationalize equity versus members who are stating that an equity lens was applied, but not necessarily knowing what that necessarily means. So I'd like to introduce one of the items in the Racial Equity Action Plan is an equity toolkit. It is a citywide toolkit that we'd like to introduce, train our workforce, and pilot, and then to fully implement within a 2-year plan. If you see in the Racial Equity Action Plan, one of the appendices provides you with the Government Alliance on Racial Equity Toolkit. And I think one of the council members had pointed out that it is quite extensive, it's quite long, and we took notice of that as well. I'd like to share with you that we've also introduced another toolkit that has been pared down from the Government Alliance on Racial Equity. It is a toolkit that has been developed by the City of Portland's Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, and it's more of a streamlined way in which groups and teams can go through and ask the questions around equity that so that there's a standardized way in which we would operationalize that. The next slide, please. This is the cycle in which this equity toolkit will guide the planning, the policies, development practices, as well as procedures. The next slide, please. And in the citywide equity toolkit, this will ensure that we are applying the lens of equity in a standardized way so that we know what we are documenting as well as capturing. And the next slide, please, is where we're trying to connect the dots for our organization. With the citywide equity toolkit, coupling with the equity mapping solutions, we can develop an equity index that will be a high-level way in which we can report on the progress or opportunities that are before us. Next slide, please. And so the two parts of the new initiatives and focus I'd like to share is the Equity Mapping Solutions Project and the Racial Equity Toolkit that I would like to return back at another time to share more information of what we mean by this project and how it will benefit the city of Tigard with Preston Beck and myself. So now we'd like to open up for any questions before we request a formal adoption of this Racial Equity Action Plan for the city of Tigard.
Thank you for your presentation. Questions? Comment? Yeah, Councilor Wolf?
A comment and a request. First, thanks to you both. Wonderful presentation. And just to take 2 seconds to share my why. As a school board member, it was rooted, I believe, in all of us that children need to see themselves in leaders and wherever they're in school, in their cities. And so just so appreciate the work that's happening, the explanation and the shifts that are happening within our recruiting, within our culture. The logo is wonderful. It's really well thought out and just represents so many things. So just kudos to the hard work that you are leading and all of you as a team. And excited to hear more from different departments and would love to have this as a regular, whether that's quarterly or what have you, but great work. So I just really, it matters deeply to me, as I think you all know as I rattle off all my questions, but really appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilor Shaw?
Yeah, thank you very much. Really appreciate the thoroughness and look forward to the history being added as well. And a question, I know we're trying to be inclusive and include lots of voices, both within the city, which I appreciate, but also with our committees. So I'm curious if the Committee for Community Engagement has had a chance to review this, or if you presented to them. So you've heard their feedback?
In regards to the Racial Equity Action Plan?
Correct.
No, they have not. We haven't made this public until now. We have had this plan shared and vetted through our leadership team, our DEI advisory team over the years, and this plan has been disseminated to the entire workforce by City Manager Steve. But in terms of with the Committee for Community Engagement, we have not shared this document yet. They have requested a DEI training for their subcommittee, and I'm taking part in that education and training piece for the group, and upon the adoption, would love to share this plan with them as well to get their feedback and thoughts as we, as City Manager Steve has mentioned, this is a live document. It's we hope to refine as we go and improve more information and resources in there as we go, and we hope to have a version 2 at the start of the new year as well.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. And similar with inclusive, I think it'd just be helpful, and I appreciate it's a live document, but maybe next time the order can be to share it with them, see if they have feedback, and then come back and we can take action. Just that way we know a lot of different perspectives and eyes and cultural perspectives have been reviewed. But thank you.
Good, thank you.
Councilor Singh?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, both of you and the city staff involved in this process. Really appreciate the transparency in the numbers and really being honest about that. I also am excited about the mapping project and just wanted to hear about the timeline on that and see like where else I guess council can support.
Great.
Any additional Youth Councilor Vogel? I just want to say, I think I have seen, I'm the one who has served the longest, and we have the most diverse council ever sitting in front of you, which is an incredible feat in itself. And the community members that I have seen participate in city events and engage with the city has changed with the council. It has been incredible to watch community members who feel as though they're being represented and they're seen and they're heard, and the diversity that has been participating far beyond what I saw 4 years ago. And with that, I'm incredibly proud that as a city, we are prioritizing that. So our workforce who is serving our community looks like our community, and truly living diversity, equity, inclusion for belonging, and leading with that with this council, I think is an incredible achievement. Sometimes I hear from individuals who are not happy with it, but far above and beyond, I hear from individuals who are proud to live in Tigard, and they are proud with the way that we are leading and that we're talking about it and we're prioritizing it. So your work is incredibly important, and I just want to acknowledge that, and I feel deeply and very strongly as well. So thank you for presenting this in front of us. I appreciate that it's a living document. We can always, do better when we learn better, and so this document is ever evolving.
Right. Thank you.
Any other additional questions or comments or motions?
See, I got, I'll find my spot. I move to adopt the Racial Equity Action Plan, version 1.0.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, the motion has been moved and seconded. Will the Youth Councilor Vogel please give an advisory vote?
Absolutely.
Thank you. All of those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion is adopted by unanimous vote of the council.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda tonight is the City Council Goals Update, and we have Senior Management Analyst Nicole Hendricks to present the staff report. At least that's what's written, but I don't see Nicole. We will start with City Manager Reimer.
Eric, can you bring up the presentation, please? All right, well, I'll kick this off here. Teammates have to be prepared at all times, so here we go. And I have Kathy's here and others are here as well to assist in this. So as the council knows, you adopted your 2023 to 25 goals earlier this year. We started a practice the previous year of trying to have quarterly updates on the progress of all of our goals. Also, I think more importantly, this year we've also started to have more individual updates. Time, place, manner has been a good example. Our environmental efforts is another one, et cetera. So we've been having more frequent communications, but we did hear from the council it'd be nice to have these quarterly check-ins still, just to look at everything in totality so the council can provide any guidance that they'd like at that time. So that's what we're gonna do tonight. So next slide, please. So as you know, you have 4 goals that we proudly hung on the wall. They're out in the lobby, and there are many other places for ourselves, the community, and our teammates to realize. And so they're focused on houselessness, our city services, climate, and safety, always with the community promise as how we're going to deliver these. And we've been referencing that already, the 5 E's a couple times, but it's important because it's embedded in how we do things. Next slide, please. So tonight we're going to walk through each of these, and I'm going to turn it over to Kim to start with our first goal, the reduce houselessness. Kim?
Thank you. Good evening. I am Kim Ezel, Senior program manager for strategic initiatives. I'm here to talk about houselessness and the goal to reduce houselessness. And one thing I want to acknowledge is so many of these topics have actually already come up this evening. I think that says a lot about just the number of teammates that I get to work with. So even though I'm the one in front of you, there are so many other teammates in every single department that are working on this initiative. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the strategies here, and then on the next slide go into some more details about accomplishments as well as some opportunities going forward. So our first strategy was creating transitional housing and securing wraparound services. And I do want to acknowledge that while we want to increase transitional housing, we also want to retain all of our current capacity. So there are concerns that one of the shelters in Tigard, Good Neighbor Center, is experiencing financial difficulties. There's a lot of conversations that are still going on around that particular shelter and the service provider. We're continuing to work with the county to preserve that capacity within Tigard and to ensure that no family that is currently receiving services there loses those services. And then for 1.2, we have successfully adopted our time, place, manner ordinance. That one is complete. We are creating grant programs to support businesses, as City Manager Reimer talked about this evening, and as you all approved. We are still working to secure ongoing state funding. That work is being led by my colleague Nicole Hendricks. And we will continue to provide council with options for tenant protections. Ken Ross spoke about that very briefly, and I know Skylar Warren is planning to come back to council sometime this fall. Next slide, please. So some of our key accomplishments, the biggest one, the one that I'm so excited about, was the $1 million that this council granted to Family Promise to increase their shelter capacity. So they bought the Quality Inn. It is now called Bridge to Home, and they are currently working on getting up to the 70 family capacity that they hope to have by the end of this year. So it's just really great. As I mentioned, time, place, manner ordinance was enacted, and I think you heard a report from Officer Orth earlier this evening on how that's been progressing. We've also established 24-hour access to restrooms on city properties, so we've increased adding porta potties around the city properties. We're also planning on reopening the bathrooms at Rotary Plaza later this fall. And then the Tigard Business Sustainability Fund that we discussed earlier this evening. But there's still a lot more work to do. So some opportunities, we are looking still to site safe lots in Tigard, providing people who are living in their cars with a safe place to park and sleep and connect up with services and housing case managers. So that is still to come. We are refining the time, place, manner ordinance, and we plan to come back to council with a proposal around warming and cooking fires. We are still looking at expanding other services for our houseless community members. Mentioned in my last briefing about daytime storage, and so we're still moving forward with that, partnering with Just Compassion. As I mentioned before, implementing tenant protections and providing policies, really connecting up that dot with it's not enough just to reduce houselessness and get people out of the streets, but prevent them from becoming houseless in the first place. So tenant protections and eviction prevention, working on that, and then finalizing that agreement with the Tigard Chamber of Commerce for the Tigard Business Sustainability Fund coming up later this year, next year. That is my update. Thank you.
I believe we have some questions. Councilor Wolf?
Thank you. That was, you are doing such great work in this area and really grabbing hold of this critical goal. And so thank you for that. So a couple different areas. You know, the safe lots, I think that's been a goal for a while. I remember seeing that when I was a candidate. So I was curious if you could speak maybe a little bit to the challenges, because I'm sure you're wanting to accomplish it, and there's got to be barriers that maybe we should learn a little bit more about. And then I'd like to circle back to Good Neighbor Center as well. But I'll just ask you first to address the safe lots. Yes,
Safe lots and shelter in general. So we're still looking even for pallet shelter locations. Siting is very, very difficult. So finding community partners who are willing to offer up their spaces has been an ongoing challenge. We've had the starts of many conversations around potential locations. Just nothing has stuck yet, but still hopeful. Still talking with some of our local churches and community partners.
Because given the funding that it just seems, whether that's Metro or the state, there seems like there would be resource opportunities if you found the right partner that would be willing to give us that property space to use, right? Or, and I'm not trying to get too much in the weeds. I'm just curious on how to solve the problem. So
Location.
location. Fair enough.
Can
Oh,
I ask,
yes.
if, just so we can keep on this topic, I assume city property, property that we own across the city has been looked at, and is there any suitable city property, or has that been looked at? I'm looking at both of you.
Yeah, it's been looked at quite a bit. City property is really at capacity. There just isn't enough space for all the things that we're already doing in the city, much less being able to offer anything else.
Oh.
But continue to look into it.
Anybody have any other questions on safe lots?
Perhaps not a
Counselor Shaw?
question, but also let's keep at it. And I know you're working hard on it, but I think it's important.
Thank you, Counselor.
Okay. Oh, Youth Councilor Vogel.
Sorry, not a question about safe lots, but about houselessness. Just looking at you guys' refining time, place, and manner, do you have a timeline looking at when you guys would be interested in coming back to council and talking about that? Just looking for more clarity on that.
I don't think we've set a council date yet, but probably looking at next month.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Councilor Wolf?
So circling back to Good Neighbor Center, I know there's been tremendous outreach from the Good Neighbor Center to look at opportunities to sustain them, and I've had the opportunity a couple times with Mayor Lube to meet with board members and then a staff member as well, and it seems like a lot of the challenges have been identified, reorganized, and they're really striving to get their house in order, if you will. But still, cash flow is a challenge. So I am in support. They've been in Tigard for a long time. And I just think, is this the appropriate time that we have a conversation about an advocacy or support as this long-time facility has been in place in Tigard, and just wanted to pursue that as a conversation with fellow council. So, because it's been something of interest to me, but I'm not sure if everyone, is up to speed. So I thought this might be a good opportunity.
Yeah, and I think this, if you don't mind, use this as an opportunity to catch everybody up. The board chair and vice chair and the interim executive director met with Councilor Wolf and I yesterday. We only got their proposal yesterday morning. And I will say, when they first came to us and we got that scary letter that they're going to close, meeting with them and really holding them accountable to, hey, what happened? What happened? How are you fixing it? How are you preventing it? And charging them with the plan. And they've worked really hard and have come back with a plan. And so things like their accounting, they have fixed. They have regular numbers. Their processes, they've fixed. They've identified places where they can cut. They have a plan going into the future and future years as far as what they're going to do in their fundraising plans. They just have a short-term year gap due to COVID funding and everything else drying up, and their previous executive director, quite honestly, dropping the ball, that they do need some interim funding to continue functioning as a shelter. And so I am in support of them asking Washington County for that funding, and I would like to write a letter from the city council that supports their request. But given the back and forth and the discussions that we've had and the concerns, we want to talk about that publicly because it's formally going before the board on Monday. So it's a quickly evolving thing that we'd like opinions on. Is that fair to say, Councilor Wolf?
Yes, and I think Manager Zalf, you have anything else that you wanted to share in terms of information that might inform council about ideas that you've heard? What I wonder is if Family Promise is able to support those families. I think that's wonderful, but I think collectively, if we look at Washington County, we're moving, families over here, but there's still, I can't remember, I'm trying to think on the tour that we had, the expectation of a wait list or the demand. So while we're helping the families that are there, we're not helping families in their entirety, because to me, then that means 11 families remain on a wait list to get placed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I know one of the plans that the county has is not to lose any family shelter beds. So one possibility is right now, Family Promise houses both families as well as medically fragile adults. And so rather than them serving both of those populations, one option that is on the table is moving the families from Good Neighbor Center into what would have been rooms for medically fragile adults at the Bridge to Home, and then using the Good Neighbor Center, maybe transitioning that to a shelter for medically fragile adults. So the number of beds and spaces would remain the same, but you would have providers that are that have specific populations that they're serving.
If I can ask just a follow-up, would you, medically fragile would include what kind of situations for individuals that they're handling, or the additional supports that they would need?
Yeah.
That would just be helpful for me.
Yeah, folks who aren't able to stay in a congregate shelter setting for any number of reasons. PTSD, they need to have better access to a restroom, they have mobility concerns. So any of those issues would cause someone to be medically fragile, a senior.
I have a general question, just as far as right now the Good Neighbor Center is kind of working on a very specific model, and I know they're providing services that Family Promise is not. So is Family Promise intending on taking on those services? One of the big things is, the Good Neighbor Center provides childcare, and I have to say, as someone, parent of a toddler who was recently single parenting, I can't even imagine trying to juggle figuring out childcare when there's no childcare available, while these individuals are trying to get on their feet and go to work and do those sorts of things. So is Family Promise anticipating continuing those services?
I'm not certain on the details of exactly where services would go. I know the county intends that all services would continue. I know the shelter would continue at Family Promise, but who else or where else those additional services would be picked up, I'm not aware.
Questions? Councilor Starr?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a terrific conversation. I guess what I'm unclear about is, and Mayor and Councilor Wolf, are you asking the city to write a letter, assuming under the mayor's signature, in support of Washington County providing dollars to the Good Neighbor Center to help fund their gap
Yes.
of funding?
Yes.
Okay. And Kim, so we don't want to lose beds. If that center were to close, we understand Family Promise could house them, but would there still be a shortage of individuals and beds?
No, so the way that the property of Good Neighbor Center works is that it was kind of granted to them by Washington County for the price of $1, and that Washington County still has a lien on the property and would reclaim the property should something happen to Good Neighbor Center. So we would not be losing any beds, and we would not be losing any beds in Tigard as a result.
So perhaps one follow-up question. If we were to write a letter, could we have something, and you both are closer to the details, in there about fiscal management or ensuring auditing? Because what I understand, it was a gross mismanagement of both the board and the staff. And if that was the case, and again, I don't know the details, but if that was the case, it'd be good to know that there's some process and that they would be audited. So that'd be my first question. And second, is that a location for safe lots?
The parking lot's not that big.
No, but Family Promise might.
I mean, every discussion I've had with Family Promise, they have no interest in safe lots.
Yeah, perhaps there's a way we can purchase some of the land. Anyway, that's a totally different topic. But I guess so if we were to write a letter, would you be amenable to adding something of fiduciary responsibility or fiscal management?
Yeah, I don't know what they are currently doing now, but what I will say is their current fiscal management is New Narrative handles all of their accounting. So a well-respected, trusted organization actually handles their accounting now, their HR, and their building maintenance. They renegotiated for a lower fee, monthly fee, and so they're not doing any of that in-house. It's all being outsourced to an outside organization. But Councilor Wolf?
I don't think I have anything to add, Mayor. I think I'm trying to also, because it's kind of a real time, seeing how the sausage is made, I guess, conversation that's really important. So I'm kind of processing the intent is that Family Promise, when they hit 70, would have this mix, and the county is looking at doing a swap. I'm still in support of GNC being what it was created for and how it exists for those families. I'm appreciating the challenges that Washington County is trying to solve as well. Anyway, so I feel like I'm lost in my own thoughts so I don't have anything to add, Mayor, in terms of to Councilor Shaw's question. I'm fine with those accountabilities, but I do think, as Mayor Loop said, that steps have really been taken to organize and reset and through new narrative, so.
Yeah, Councilor Shaw.
And for us, one follow-up, if New Narrative is managing the Good Neighbor Center, is there a reason they can't just take it over? And again, there may be intricacies to that I don't know about, but I'm concerned about the fiscal component.
Yeah, so they're not managing the center. They're just doing their financials. They're like a consultant who's doing their accounting. They're outsourcing their accounting. And what I will say is I believe that they have talked about it, but New Narrative has such a completely different model and is doing a completely different thing that it made no sense when they talked about it to combine in any sort of way. So they did talk about it, but they're not managing them in any sort of way. Does that help?
Thank you very much. I'm recognizing this is timely. Does staff, look at City Manager Reimer, does staff have any opinions one way or the other as to
I don't know if we have opinions. I think we have some process thoughts here. I think this is a good conversation. This is great that you're talking through it. Having Kim here tonight is helpful. Obviously, I'll use the word channeling a lot of what we've heard from the county. And so I know one of the things we'll be doing is following up with the county. There's new information from the Neighbor Center. And so we'll be trying to make that connection just to understand, have they seen that, have some of their opinions or recommendations planned to change so we can make sure that, ideally the city and county are together. But we'll work on that in short order to make sure that conversation, obviously I think it's important that if possible, Councilor Wolf and Mayor are involved in talking with them to, enlighten the county on what we've heard and then have a conversation. So hopefully that will inform the final decision. But I think tonight, as the Mayor has suggested, is looking at does the council feel there's a desire and need to provide that support to the county so as they make a decision, they know where Tigard is positioned.
Yeah, Council President Hu.
Yeah, I really appreciate Mayor Loop and Councilor Wolf's effort in this, and I really don't want to see any bad close, but like Councilor Shaw, I do have concern because I don't have any details, so I'm reluctant. I hope you can understand to say anything at this point. I just want to mention that when I toured the affordable housing, the two that just built in Tigard or recently, they did mention that the Tigard provide seed money to them, and that created credibility to county and the state so they can receive additional funding to finish the project. My concern about recommending something from the city council without me particularly knowing anything about it is that if we, like we all, I think you all admit you don't really know everything either. So if something we are not aware of and it became a problem in the future, I worry that the city will lose credibility with the county and the state. So, so right now, without knowing anything, I don't think I can recommend we send a letter. But I don't think this will anything. I don't oppose the mayor writing a letter, just saying she supported. So, so I guess I'm just being blunt here. So.
No, I appreciate that, and I understand that y'all haven't seen the plan, and so I think we do have a couple of days to decide because I would hope that the letter would be written, I think, by Thursday in order to send it to the county. And so what I can do is commit to forwarding the plan to you tomorrow morning so everyone can read through and see. I think it's helpful. Does that sound like a good next step? And then to prevent a serial meeting, you can all respond to City Manager Reimer.
Yeah, I mean, I understand now they have people do their accounting, but again, I don't know anything about it, and I just don't know necessarily the previous, mishap could be cured just by hiring an outside consultant. I mean, they allow one person or one to have so much power and unchecked, and now it's a disaster. Apparently, I don't know anything about it.
Well,
so
I want to caution you by
Yeah.
I don't know that you have enough information
Exactly.
to call it the disaster that you're and saying power unchecked. So let's take a beat. And so the letter actually, the plan explains everything that happened
Okay.
and what they're doing to prevent it. Because again, when they came to me, I asked the questions of, hey, what happened? How are you fixing it? How is it not going to happen again? And that helped them to form the next phase of the plan.
I
So
appreciate
I want to caution the way that we're framing it,
Right.
because I do think potentially you don't have enough information
Exactly.
to call it that. So
Yeah, I just want to say I don't know
I
anything
just-
about it.
yeah.
And this is just, this is just appearance to me, and without knowing anything about it, so I could be totally wrong. So thank you, Mayor.
yeah. So I'm just thinking of also sound bites, right? Like, that's, so anyway, Council Wolf.
Yeah, the only thing that I wonder about is as the issues around houselessness have hit kind of a rapid pace, funding has been brought forward at a rapid pace, and everyone's trying to do the right thing really, really fast. And I think systems and government agencies and how you process, how you collect, all those pieces, I think sometimes can be hurdles and barriers too. So I appreciate that we all could learn a lot and get smarter about systems and processes. And in the meantime, I think a lot of people are trying to do good things for people that are in huge need. And so I'm just looking at a program that's been in our community for decades, trying to do the right thing that maybe can get their ship steered in the right direction. But I appreciate the additional information, everyone taking a breath and having a chance to get caught up on the current status and then seeing what makes sense. And then I also would like to just learn a little bit more about this idea of swapping or what the vision there was, and I can follow up with you, Kim, on that. So.
Any additional questions or comments? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that conversation on the first goal we discussed, which was to reduce houselessness. So we'll move on to the second goal for discussion tonight. As you recall, we did not number our goals anymore because they're all important. And so if we can have the next slide, Eric. Thank you. At this point, Emily and Kenny, who are the leads on this one, both had family commitments tonight. So our city attorney has agreed to step in and provide the overview. So, city attorney.
So Community Development Director Asher put together a script for me. So if this sounds like words that Mr. Asher would say, that is why. So on this slide, you'll see the team is making substantial progress on 3 of Council's 4 strategies as we move toward reducing carbon emissions in Tigard and centering climate considerations in Council's decision making. The only strategy that isn't yet underway is providing incentives for Tigard community members to move to more climate-friendly choices. That strategy should be tackled in the next quarter or 2. Next slide, please. Just a few weeks ago, you heard a comprehensive update on all the climate work that is happening around the city, especially in the Public Works, Community Development, and Library departments. Since then, there has been some more progress, including advocacy at the state level for accelerated housing production that also lowers greenhouse gas emissions from construction and building systems. This includes leading by example in River Terrace, where we are planning for carbon responsible housing development thanks to a planning grant we expect to receive from the Department of Energy. We are ramping up an information campaign about efficient buildings and building systems in Tigard, which will soon be featured on our website through videos and stories. And one of those will be presented to you very soon, the Hampton Apartments project under construction in the Triangle right now. And we're making progress towards a Soul Smart Silver designation. Next quarter, we expect to have more to report regarding the study to update our baseline emissions and the formation of an internal working group to focus on the first strategy, prioritizing carbon responsibility in the city operations, projects, and policies. So that is it. I cannot answer any questions for you.
Thank you for that report.
I think, Mayor, the good news is we took a tour, and so we're familiar with some of those, including the Soul Smart Silver designation. So thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up something about the terminology carbon responsibility. This doesn't have to be answered now, but just wanted to bring it up to Kenny or Emily. Just wanting to get more clarity on that term and in terms of like why we're using it versus like, you know, just being straightforward with reducing carbon, or because there's other greenhouse gases like methane and nitrous oxide and things like that. So I think just getting clarity on like why we're focusing on that word would be helpful.
All right, we will follow up on that. Thank you. All right. If we have no other questions on climate that we can't answer, as the city attorney said.
Council President.
And just one more comment. I thought the educational component is also meant for the council as well. So I don't hear any initiative on that yet.
Okay.
Just highlight Councilor Singh's point. You know, we should know what that term means, right? So yeah, so maybe we can ask Kenny or Emily about the educational component for the council as well. So
yeah,
we
absolutely.
Can get educated.
Yeah, we can absolutely follow up with something that, you know, starts to answer those questions, and even as we come back with, you know, just a focus on the climate change, we can, you know, have that stuff prepared as well. All right, so if we can move to the next slide, Eric, I'll just quickly introduce. So the next goal is to modernize and improve city services, and this is really focused in two key areas, which is, here we go. So total Tyler. So that's the first one, and then the facility modernization. And I'm going to turn over to our Assistant City Manager, Kathy Nyland. She'll take the first part with Tyler, and then I'll talk about the facilities. Kathy.
I feel as though if I had $1 for every time we said Tyler, we would pay for the project. Like, it's good. So good evening, Mayor and Councilors. I'm Kathy Nyland, the Assistant City Manager of Engagement and Innovation, and also the executive sponsor of Tyler. Before I jump into it, I feel as though I need to channel Ken Ross and mention the 49ers. I'm a fan. They did really well this weekend, so just wanted to throw that out there. So I'm here tonight to talk about one of your council goals, and that is to modernize and improve city services. That could capture so many things here at Tiger, but tonight we will focus on Tyler, our ERP system, as well as facilities. We're going to talk about the work that has been done around Tyler, the accomplishments we have made, and the milestones we are approaching. For facilities, you'll hear about the search for sites, as well as potential regional funding needs and future requests. Now on to Tyler and our ERP system. Next slide. So Councilor Cha, I'm going to channel you for a minute as I remind our viewers that ERP, that acronym stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. So if my memory serves correctly, we last provided an update about Tyler to Council in April. And at that point, we had completed a third-party assessment of our project, and we were implementing those recommendations. Since then, we have launched 2 requests for proposals, and because of successful bids, we now have a new Tyler project director, Clarence Clark from DataClimb. He joined us last month, and we have additional team members who started this week to help with human resources, utility billing, and change management. This additional capacity was due to your investment in our fiscal year 2024 budget. This is allowing us to create resource-based plans, or as your goal states, appropriate the necessary team and finance resources to this ERP project. I am pleased to announce that trainings are also underway. In early September, over 55 people were trained on accessing Tyler. This week, trainings focus on approvals, and more will come as we approach our first go live date. Munis, which is really finance, is scheduled to go live October 2nd. Finally moved that date from pencil into pen because we are that confident. And I personally want to send huge kudos out to the many, many people who have helped us reach that point. Council, your goal was for us to implement Tyler, and we are well on our way. We will talk more about this important project later this month, September 26th, as I will be back with some of our team to give you a more detailed briefing about Tyler and introduce you to some of our key colleagues who have helped really recalibrate this project. Happy to turn this over to City Manager Reimer to talk about facilities.
Thank you, Kathy. Next slide, please, Eric. So the other part of this goal, as we've referenced a couple times now, is about the modernization of the facilities. The ones you're sitting in, our police department, which is next door, our public works, our IT niche. The only thing we're not talking about is our library primarily in this case. And as the council knows, especially during your onboarding process, one of the first things we did is invited all of you, as well as our existing, to tour our facilities to get a sense of what are we talking about. This has been a conversation that's been going on for multiple years, and in fact the conversation about the police department, I have learned multiple times, goes back decades. And so we've really reached a point for many different reasons that the true word of modernization of our facilities is necessary. It's necessary to make sure that we have the adequate and appropriate workspace for all of our teammates, or our community members to engage with us, that we're reaching our environmental goals through the design of new facilities, and the list goes on of the things that we're trying to achieve. So during those tours, you had firsthand knowledge of this facility, and really is when you're in the police department, you just got a sense of the lack of space we have, the lack of appropriate space we have throughout that facility, as well as public works as we've grown. Obviously, our community grows, the need for an expansion of public works grows, and so those are the things that we've been pursuing. And the first thing was really trying to acquire a site. And as you know from our conversations the last couple of years, it already came up tonight in Safe Lots. Finding land in Tigard is a very difficult thing. One, it's difficult to find the appropriate site, and then the cost of the land. So in the sequencing of our facility modernization, the vision is to move public works out of our downtown. I think the council agrees, everyone agrees with the vision that that is not the best use of our downtown space, is to have a corporation yard for public works there. That said, we also need to find the appropriate space. So we're looking for 8 to 10 acres of usable land for our public works site. That's important because that's the first move. If we stick to the vision, then it would be to build a new city hall and police department across the street. We also know that's challenging just because of the sequencing of this, and time is not our friend in this because of just the condition of our facilities. And so what we're doing is looking at multiple sites and multiple options for the council to consider, to look at where could we move public works. Should we continue with the vision of then moving public works will take multiple years to build a new one, scrape that building and then build a new city hall and police department? Or should we find other sites where it might be appropriate as well for first priority is the police department, the second would be city hall. And so right now we're pursuing multiple sites, and we hope to have an executive session I would say in the near future. I'll keep you updated on the progress that we're making, but where we can come back and have a little more comprehensive discussion of funding sources, price and terms for various sites, so you can understand the totality of that. And then the second piece of this was really looking for securing funding. And so maybe we can go to no, we can leave it here, I'm sorry. The next thing is really looking at how would we fund development of the sites, right? They're expensive projects, but they're an investment. I think we need to look at them not as an expense of the city, but they're really investing in this community, this organization, to make sure that we provide the best services for our teammates as well as the community. And so on that note, what we're doing is we just had our second conversation last week, in fact, with our regional partners who are listed up there, at least some of them that are listed up there, and really trying to understand what is going to be occurring in our region, and really for the overlays in our taxing jurisdiction, if you will, where the taxpayers in our community are going to be asked for potential funding measures. And so we're understanding what TVF&R is looking at. We're understanding what the school district is and the timing, as well as the county, and a couple different ways for their library services to potential other needs that we have. So all that is going to impact when we bring it forward, but we're also, I guess the bottom line is we're working on the site, and then parallel to that, ultimately preparing for educating our community, and then potentially asking our community for funding for those facilities. So a lot of information there, not a lot of specificity yet because we don't have that, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about this, and I know our assistant city manager is well about Tyler.
Thank you. Questions? No. Well done.
All right, one more goal. Next slide, please, Eric. Thank you. And here comes Chief. Chief, I'll welcome you up. So the next one is to enhance community safety and access. And this really focuses, you may recall around the conversation during the goal setting, really a focus on Hall Boulevard, and then safety in general, but really a focus on our public safety levy renewal that we've been working on. And so if we can, all these are in progress. If we can go to the next slide, please. I'll touch on a few, and then I'm going to just turn over to Chief, and if you can
Appreciate it.
bring it home for us, if you will. So the mayor and all of you, as well as Representative Bowman and many others, were involved in extensive conversations, Emily Tritch and others. And as you know, we secured the $3 million for Hall Boulevard. And that was a success, right? That was a key thing. One of the things that you're aiming for is not only the jurisdictional transfer, but to make sure that we have the appropriate funding to bring up to a state of good repair, and then obviously to make even additional improvements to Hall Boulevard. You saw the vision that was shared a month to 6 weeks ago by Dave and others on what Hall Boulevard could look like into the future. But the first step is really the jurisdictional transfer and the accompanying funds. And so we made progress this year in that, as well as legislation, as you heard from our representatives last time, in regards to that process and the state talking about it. So we've made some good progress in that. And so the next is just continuing those conversations that all of you are engaged with at the local level, regional level, state and federal levels, and how we can make sure that the transfer happens and that we have the appropriate funding levels to make sure that we can bring the street up to a state of good repair. I'm going to turn it over to Chief now and let Chief talk about our public safety levy.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Again, good evening, Chief McAlpine. Up there, you see 82 events so far that we've been trying to leverage opportunities to communicate on the levy renewal, really emphasizing the word renewal. A lot of it is just handing out flyers, educating people. I think most of you got to see the street fair was really a significant time to actually have some conversations. It was a time for myself to be there for about 6 hours and just really have the interactive map, kind of have a fun icebreaker of just saying, how many officers do you think are working right now? It's always interesting. I'm sure some of you heard some of their comments. One highlight was just a person who moved from the UK, and so she thought it was about 216. Yeah, okay, so we had a good conversation. But anybody who's lived in the community, we still have as high as 100. Some say 50, 30. Some are about the 25. Most are shocked when they hear what the actual numbers are, except for those who have told me that they knew the answer because they've listened to the mayor speak. And so that's your plug, Mayor, that people are listening, so thank you for that. And so many were, obviously they're stopping by, they're probably feeling very comfortable in interacting with the police, and so many of them are supportive. So we'll continue that outreach. This week I did do a recorded interview about the levy with Kelsey at TVC TV, and so they're gonna edit that and work on that. We know that the polling has come back. Kathy's going through that right now. I believe we're going to share that with you on the 26th, and maybe make some pivots and decision making on all of that. The subcommittee, which Councilor Wolf and Singh are on, we would meet and discuss, both trying to understand maybe what the concerns are, what's the messaging, where are we outreaching to everybody, so very inclusive in that regard. And right now, again, predominantly we've been leveraging events that either the police department and or the city have, and just responding to whoever shows up to those city events. But we are working, I think we have one event with one of the faith-based organizers that invited us, and then I have been talking to Unite Oregon on another opportunity. Perhaps in November they've reached out and looking for a way to maybe partner up. So I look forward to sharing, at least with the subcommittee, a little bit more information on that at the very least. And then lastly, well, as Steve mentioned, we do have the open house where we're hoping to see anywhere from 600 to 700 that we've had in the past. And then being able to just, again, demonstrate, showcase the police department, things that we've done, to be able to have a levy table, to be able to have a community academy booth that maybe perhaps some people will be interested in participating in our next wave of that. So we're looking forward to that event. We have more than 120 we see in the near future. So it's a full court press, as you can imagine. And oftentimes we're just, you know, our community, as you've heard, has changed quite a bit. And so many may not even be aware that a levy was passed, let alone that a renewal is coming up. So we found that education in a lot of different ways is going to be imperative for us to get the message out. And then the last one, as you well know, because you got to see Officer Orth, is having the downtown officer. I don't think he's slowed down 1 minute since he's been there, and I think he has really embraced his role. Got to know a lot of the businesses, the community members who have access. He's tried to make himself accessible, really think about the issues at hand and really trying to solve them if they're in his lane, if not, to reach out, not just pass it along, but connect either city services or even community partners in trying to problem solve that. And I did have at Street Fair, well, you're not taking away our officer, are you, if this doesn't happen, you know? And so you can see a little bit of ownership and pride from the downtown community that appreciate his presence. So happy to answer any of your questions that you may have.
I think that's really a testament to Officer Orth as a human being and an individual. Questions, comments? We don't have any.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, we don't have any non-agenda items or executive session. Is there a motion for adjournment?
I move to adjourn.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you so much. Good night, Tigard.